Back to Awaken the Game, guys. We have such an incredible channeling today with Mother Gaia. We're talking about the role of the split in this crazy ascension game. We are talking about how to access the fifth dimensional state of being in the now moment. I have quite a number of questions with Gaia on that particular one, almost like asking her again and again to clarify and make it easier for us to understand, because often the way that she comes through, just like any celestial being or angelic being or galactic being, they often come through with the higher wisdom, which for us here down on the earth plane, we're kind of like, what the fuck does that mean? So I've been really working with Gaia on this one to try and make it as easy to understand as possible. We also talk about some of the, and I won't use the word, I'm going to say trails in the sky, and clarify on what we were talking about in the last channeling with Adamus around how these pollutants in the air and other pollutants in our soil aren't actually having the impact on us that the agenda wants to have on us. So there's lots and lots jam-packed into this next half an hour, 40 minutes. I'm going to try and chapter it out as easy as I can, so that if you're interested in the split, go towards the end. If you're interested in the pollutants, go towards the beginning. It is a really incredible channel. The other thing I wanted to just mention is that some parts of this I'm trans-channeling Gaia directly, and I'm speaking as her, as in her frequency is coming through my voice. And in other times, we flipped into more of she was informing what I was saying, and I was speaking it from my own reference point, because I was struggling to hold her energy and my own at the same time. So there is a little bit of flip-flopping in that regard, but I think you'll understand just by the nature of the channel. All right, as always, I hope you enjoy it. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I've been getting some really cool inbox questions around topics that you would like to see and channel about. So I'm adding them onto the list, and I'm going to be talking about those in the upcoming weeks. As always, you can subscribe for more of those, and I will head over to the channeling. It is not that the trails have completely stopped. Unfortunately, these do continue to some degree, a much lesser degree than they were. The poisonings are still at play to a much lesser degree than they were. However, you as a being now, because collectively you're more aware, your vibration has increased tenfold, and you have the ability to transmute negativity to such a degree that the impact of these attempts, you can choose to not have in this instance, you gave the example of chemtrails, you can choose to be unaffected by the chemtrails, by your own awareness, by your own light. If you say, I am healthy, I am strong, I am light-filled, you don't worry about these chemtrails, you don't believe that you are absorbing poison in your breath, but rather you feel as though you are putting clean air in your body. You can go out and buy air purifiers or move to the country. You can do the things that help you to actually believe that, but ultimately you have the ability just through your consciousness alone and declaring to the universe what you consent to. I consent only to clean, yummy, nourishing air that fulfills me. That does so much to cleanse the energy. What I want to remind you of is the Japanese water experiment. Yes, I know that most of the people watching this have likely seen it, but you can Google it or YouTube it if you want to. And I just bring that awareness in to just anchor this point home even more, that you can take the same water and then you can imbue the water with negative energy, or you can imbue the water with crystalline energy, and it will have a completely different crystalline structure. The water adjusts. A lot of everything that the air you breathe has water in it. And air molecules are even more susceptible to energetic impulse than water because they're less dense. The more dense the matter is, so if you take wood, for example, it takes a lot more energetic
focus and intensity to change that. But with water, with air, because it's so light-filled in its natural state, it can really change. And so with polluting the air, that is why your signature, your frequency has so much of an impact. Believe it or don't. Either way, you will create based on that belief. That is all. I hope that answers your question. I would like a timeline. Just going to be bold. Can you give out a timeline for when we hit this critical mass? You know, I've spoken to my team and they say 2027 to 2033 is when things really kind of get going. Andreas, the timeline fully depends upon the Earth inhabitants. The more of you that choose to be in the now moment, the more of you that choose to be in your presence, in your heart, and to focus and work on being in your heart more, just like the technique I offered in the last channeling. The more of you that do that consciously and choose that, the faster this all happens from a linear time perspective. But what I want to remind you is that you don't need to worry about the when you are in the now, because when you are in the now, it's already happened. You can access the fifth dimensional frequency and consciousness now. You can do that now by simply being in your beingness. By letting go of before and tomorrow and coming into the now. This is how you access it. And when you've accessed that, time is irrelevant. Time is irrelevant. You've already accessed it. I get it. I do get that, but I fear I fear that it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to people, that it's too woo-woo, like too out there to really anchor down. Can you give some form of like secondary example or something that's going to assist others to understand what you mean when you say that you can access the fifth dimensional consciousness now? Okay, just tuning in. Yes, I understand that you need another example, because it is a high dimensional consciousness concept. Let me just download you this image. Just trust the image, and as you speak the words, Andreas, the metaphor will make itself known. I know you don't understand yet. Visualize a maze. See a maze in front of your eyes. See this maze. It's a hedge maze. It's beautiful. It's ornate. This hedge maze is old. It's ancient. This hedge maze is as timeless and beautiful as any other monument on this earth. An ancient hedge maze. And you are trying to reach the center of the hedge maze. And the center of the hedge maze represents the fifth dimensional consciousness, or the crystalline consciousness. There are two ways to reach the center of the maze. The first way is to walk through the maze. And by walking through the maze, you will go through and you will see the towering walls around you, and you will get lost in the maze. And you will take the right turns and the wrong turns, and you might beat yourself up when you take the wrong turns and feel elated when you take the right turns. You might say to yourself, I've got this, I can do this, I'm going to reach the center when you make the right turns. And when you make the wrong turns, you might say, this is hopeless, I'm lost, I feel confused, I don't know what I'm doing. And eventually, you will reach that center point of the maze. Hopefully. There is the possibility, through your own choosing, that you decide that I can't do this, and I'm just going to sit here And I'm going to be annoyed and sad and feel worthless. And I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit here and suffer, and I'm put my foot down and I'm not moving. And then you will never reach the center of the maze because you've decided that you can't. Maybe, just maybe, someone else will come along and drag you and show you the way and guide you. Of course, that is what the light workers are doing. They are helping guide people to the center of the maze. But there is another way. Another way is to remember that you are not a little being trying to move through a maze, that is an illusion. My beautiful souls, you are the maze. You are the earth that it stands upon. You are the ancient hedges. You are the person, the human being, trying to move through it. And you are the center of the maze. You are the light in the center of the maze. You are the maze, and therefore, because you are it, and you are the light inside of it, it is immediately accessible to you. You just have to remember and connect to that. By breathing your lightness in, just as we described in length in the previous channeling. Light meditation. Meditations, there are so many out there for you to connect in to your beingness, to connect into the now, to break the illusion that you are somehow other than the everything. You are the everything. You are the everything. And when you remember that you are the maze and you are the light in it, and therefore the light is accessible to you now, you have shortcut it. You have accessed it now. And you will choose whether you decide to stay small and hoping for the best in the maze, or whether you remember that you are the maze itself, that you created the maze, that you are the sky above the maze and the earth below it, that you are the bugs that critter inside of the maze. You are every blade of grass that the human self walks on inside the maze. It is all consciousness that you are. Your consciousness, your fullness of your consciousness. That when you access the crystalline frequency, the fifth dimensional frequency, you're essentially just becoming aware of more of it, more of who you are. That is how you access the center of the maze. There are some that may not understand this, and yet I would say, if you just keep focusing on the now moment, on the light, on being and breathing into the light, if you just keep focusing on that and focusing on being and trying to be more present by letting go, by forgiving, by meditating, then it will become clearer and clearer over time. And it is going to become easier and easier and easier and easier because of the energies that are coming through now. I hope that gives you another example. Yes, it does. And I still fear that people won't get it. Is there anything else you can speak to on that? Andreas, as they will never get it if they are trying to understand it through the mind, because the mind doesn't get it. The mind is trying to take what I've said and put it on a timeline. And as soon as it's doing that, it's lost it. You only can access this by feeling your beingness. Go and sit by a tree and feel the beingness. Go and sit by a tree and feel the energy. Try and tune into the energy of the tree and just being with the tree. You don't have to take it anywhere, make it something, or go anywhere with this. You just need to be with the tree. That will do the job at supporting you to be with your fullness. And then you will become closer to knowing what I'm trying to convey to you. Thank you. I want to understand this idea of the split. There's all of this talk of like the split between the old earth and the new earth. And so there's like two worlds or realities existing now. Can you speak to more of that and what that means from your perspective as the fifth dimensional frequency of that split? The split is not a physical split. The split is that humans are choosing to align to a particular frequency. If you're taking the third dimensional frequency, then they're choosing to stay aligned to time, to identity, to right and to wrong. They're to fear, to love, as though they are opposite forces, this polarity dynamic. Then that's the pieces that they're aligning to. Over here in the fifth dimensional frequency, what they're aligning to is presence, the now moment, love, and light. So what I'm seeing and what she's showing me is that there's energetically these two realities taking place. And before, we were pretty much, majority of humans were all polarized into the third dimensional frequency. So that was the perpetuating reality. There was no split in consciousness because almost nobody was accessing that fifth dimensional frequency. Maybe pieces of, maybe like Buddha and Jesus and some enlightened souls perhaps were accessing that higher frequency, but for the most part, the majority of humans were just here calibrating at that frequency. And so there was nothing to split. Whereas the reality that we find ourselves in now is that so many people are actually moving closer and closer to the fifth dimensional frequency. And yes, a lot of us, like myself, and most are sort of oscillating between, like you could use the fourth dimension to I guess, signpost that, oscillating between the third and fifth frequency all the time. But ultimately, more and more and more are aligning more and more and more to this fifth dimensional frequency. And so when that happens, what we perceive is a reality split, because we've got multiple humans holding one form of reality, and then we've got multiple humans holding another form of reality, all at the same time. So we will be seeing the same thing with our physical eyes and experiencing completely different realities. And what Gaia is telling me is it's actually far more complex than this, in that there is no split. It is actually that there are millions upon billions of realities taking place all at once, each one in its own caliber of frequency. Because every single soul here is creating their reality through their conscious awareness all at once. 1 million people could see the same thing unfold. Let's take the situation in Gaza and have 1 million different interpretations and 1 million different feelings and responses to that. Of course, there's going to be different signatures and stuff like that, as in like different schools of thought around it. But ultimately, every single human being has created their own reality construct around the particular situation in Gaza, to the point where some people aren't even aware of it at all. And some people are there on the ground, and everything in between. And so there's all of these different frequencies and experiences that are being held. And if we were to like categorize the two experiences of third dimensional and fifth dimensional, this is the split that we're seeing. And as we continue to, what she's showing me now is as we continue to move forward in the linear time, because ultimately we're still in linear time on a physical body, as in there is a tomorrow and there is a day after that. And as we progress in linear time, we will see this split accentuate. And we will see the people that have chosen the fifth dimensional frequency become increasingly more loving, become increasingly more vibrant, become increasingly more happy, more grateful, and more compassionate to each other. And we will see on the flip side, the people that have decided to polarize into the third dimensional frequency, usually from fear, stubbornness, maybe they don't want to. That's a choice. They're allowed to have that choice. They're happy in their daily suffering. They will become more angry, more frustrated, more upset, more divided. And so this frequency split will create these multiple schools of reality or schools of thought all taking place at once, which will be quite discombobulating when all of that is happening. And it is, when everyone was over here in the third dimensional frequency, that was one thing. When so many people are like, this scope of what's being experienced on the earth plane is so much wider. this is what's creating the split. Eventually, we get to the point. Okay, Gaia wants to come back in for this part. Thank you, Andreas. You explained that very well. Thank you, Andreas. I would like to come in for this next part because you could feel where I was going, which is what takes place after the split, which was your natural next question, Andreas. Of course. And what I want to say to you is that eventually you reach a place where the split is so severe that the two realities cannot coexist anymore. This part is going to be challenging to receive because it isn't something that you may understand on a human level, and yet I trust that you will receive it. You already know it on a soul level, but when we reach that point, if you are anchored into the third dimension, you will no longer see the people that are in the fifth dimension. It'll be like they disappear from your consciousness. It will be like when a friend moves away and you didn't realize that they moved away. Maybe you lost touch with that friend and then you've completely forgotten about them. When that happens now, 5 years go by and then you go, oh God, I haven't caught up with so-and-so. Where is she now? What happened to that person? It's like they just disappeared from my life. That is what it will feel like to the third dimensional human. Although what will actually happen in this time is that those humans will never remember to contact their old friend again. There are some, okay, there's a nuance to this. There are some that originally will make the choice to polarize into the third dimension, but then they have a change of mind. These are the last minute souls, so to speak. That's not quite accurate because it's not a time thing, but these are the souls that at the last minute they decide, actually no, I do want to make the shift on a soul level, and they will remember the people that are no longer around. And by doing that, by the remembering of it in itself, that will start spinning the wheels to go through the motions quite quickly, to go through the spiritual awakening required in order to then move into the fifth dimensional frequency. And when they do that, it's like their old friends will feel like they're kind of like over there in this faraway place, and they'll be trying to reach for their friends, and the friends in the fifth dimension will be saying, yeah, come and join us. Come and join us. Come and join us. When we get to this point, they'll understand. They will know that they actually have to make a choice to leave their loved ones behind that are in the third dimension. It's hard to articulate this to the human mind, but this is how it plays out. And with those in the fifth dimensional frequency, those in the fifth dimensional frequency will have the awareness of what they've left, whereas those in the third dimensional frequency just become simply unaware of the fifth dimensional frequency people. Those in the fifth dimensional frequency will have very, very full awareness of who they love, who has chosen to stay in the third dimensional frequency. And there will be no sadness or suffering around that because there's full awareness, full acceptance, full love, full consciousness to their choice as a being. And because the fifth dimensional frequency is so loving, compassionate, and in the now moment, it's not concerned or worried about that. When that split takes place, they'll know that these people are no longer around because they've decided to stay in the old world. But now Andreas is coming in and saying, okay, but what about, like, well, how does that work? Do you just, like, disappear? Is there a big cosmic shift? Like, how do we perceive that as human beings? Like, how do we perceive that shift? Like, what takes place there? I understand your frustration with that. For you wish to know what it feels like. I can't explain to you in words how this happens, but I'm going to give you a feeling. Is there a solar flash? Is the solar flash part of this? No. There is a series of solar flares that take place, and they already are. These solar flares are doing their job to boost the energy. And there is a series of solar flares that take place which significantly boost the energy and do destabilize your power systems and does feel like a cosmic wave. But that isn't what rips or splits the two worlds apart. It's more of an ongoing process of frequency alignment. And all I can say is amnesia. That's all I can say. That's the feeling I was given. It's like, you know how we incarnate here and we forget? We have the amnesia put on us that we can't remember who we are as a soul. We fall into the Maya, the game. We feel like we're this little being and my problems are the biggest things in the world because we forget that we are all things. We are all consciousness. It's not until we become awake that we realize the truth of who we are. It's like that. That's their amnesia. And this amnesia is so strong that they forget the people. They just forget. They gradually just forget. And because the amnesia is so strong, it's like someone who has dementia. They don't even know that it's happening. It just happens. And then that's their reality. And for us, that's a similar thing. I'm speaking as, if you're watching this, I feel pretty secure in knowing that I can say us going into that fifth dimensional frequency because of our choice to align to that on a soul level. We are also in that, and we know that they've disappeared because we can't see them anymore because they're no longer aligned to the fifth dimensional frequency that we're in, fully vibrating. They're in this time matrix down here. We're in the now moment in the physical form. Though we can't see them unless we consciously decide to enter the third dimensional frequency, which is a whole nother story for a whole nother day. It feels like there is the possibility that we can consciously lower our vibration and pull in to that field if we so choose. That's almost like a role that some people will play, is that some people are going in and out, almost like, oh my gosh, they're I'm seeing it's getting Star Trek-y. They're making these cosmic voyages, so to speak, into the other frequency. Taking that, we've aligned to our frequency and we can't see them. We know what was, and we're in full acceptance of what is. And was and is doesn't even mean anything in the fifth dimensional frequency because it takes place in the now. And in the fifth dimensional frequency, language doesn't really get utilized because when you use language, it actually pulls you into a timeline, because language is something that is beautiful, but conversing in English, for example, that is a time-bound language, in that in order to understand what I'm saying, you have to have experienced it in the past and over time comprehensively built up the understanding of the sentence that I'm saying. So in order to understand spoken language, you actually need time to understand the language. That's why light language, which is a fifth dimensional and higher frequency, it isn't something that you can translate or interpret. To translate light language into English, you're kind of just doing your best to like draw the shadow of something that has, like, to draw the shadow of something. You're not actually, what I can see is like it's like you're trying to, if you were looking at a tree and you were to create a drawing of a tree to describe what a tree is, and then you said, this is a tree. It's not the tree, and it's not the energy signature of the tree, but that's what you're doing. So that's what happens when you're translating light language into English, for example. But light language is actually felt, and it's actually a psychic language because you experience it in the now moment. And it doesn't need to be translated into anything because it's telepathic. And it's this like, you feel it. That's the point. And when we move into the fifth dimensional frequency, it's telepathic. Like we're speaking telepathically because we're not speaking, we're sending knowingness to each other, if that makes sense. So it's like, if I wanted to communicate with you about something, then I would just telepathically send that to you and you would know the entirety of what I'm trying to convey to you in the now moment, in an instant. It wouldn't require this like lengthy sentence because it's all given to you all at once. That's how energy happens. You just know. And that's really hard to understand from the timeline perspective we have in the third dimensional frequency. But in the fifth dimensional frequency, this is how it is. That was an aside. All right. I think that's enough questions for the day. Is there anything that you would like to say? I just want to thank you. I want to thank you all. I want to remind you that you are the maze, that you are the light inside of the maze, and that you are the person that is walking through it. You are all things. Remember this, know this, breathe into this, and you will soon be more present in your body and therefore be anchored in the fifth dimensional frequency more easily. That is what I wish to share with you, and that's what I wish to leave you with today. We're just going to bow here and close off this channel. I can feel the channel is still a little bit open. I'm going to take this offline to close the channel so that it's not 10 minutes of me decompressed. If you got anything out of today's channeling and session, it was a long one today. Thank you so much for staying with it and for being here. And I am just so grateful to you. Please like and subscribe if this resonates with you and you want to feel and hear more. We're building such a beautiful community here on YouTube, but you can also follow me on TikTok and on Instagram if those social media platforms feel good for you. The links to those are going to be in the show notes below. You can find all of the information about me and my offerings there. I look forward to seeing you in the next communication. Much love, much light to you.